Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us here today in our True Wealth virtual classroom. I'm Nik Aamlid, one of the wealth advisors here with Pinnacle Wealth in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And today, we're going to be hitting on one of the topics that comes up most in our meetings, things to consider in retirement. So if you hadn't had a chance to check out some of the other topics we've done webinars on, be sure to head over to pinnaclewealth.com, click the Insights tab at the top, and then you can scroll down to the Learning Center. You can see all sorts of other webinars and content we put out there. But today also, there's a lot of additional content packs that come with this webinar. So be sure to download those. If you have trouble with that, certainly reach out to us. Don't hesitate, and we'll make sure to get that to you. So without further ado, why don't we dive into retirement and things to consider as you're contemplating retirement here. First, what is retirement? Good question that a lot of us ask, and I think a lot of us know. The technical definition of retirement is the act of ending your working or professional career or the period of life after you have no income for employment. But it's not simply, I guess, as a lot of us look at it, the typical stop working. Many people actually continue to work. I.e., they get up in the morning and they go somewhere in some capacity. For some people, that's as a volunteer. Consulting is another thing people do. Some of it considered just a fun job. You retire from your career and do a fun little job. And of course, there's certainly people that just like to hunt and fish and golf or chase grandkids. And we all know that can be work as well. So it's retiring from your career, being done with your career, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're just sitting around doing nothing. So some of the things we hear, just statistics on retirement, we hear a lot about the baby boomer generation. This generation is those individuals born between 1946 and 1964. So right now in the U.S., there's nearly 52 million Americans that are age 65 and older. And this year actually, so that typically was the biggest generation that we had in the United States. This year actually, the millennial generation took over the baby boomers as the largest generation in the U.S. But the baby boomers are still second, and by 2030, every one of them is going to be 65 or older, so entering that so-called retirement years of their life. And some of the main concerns we hear within this group as they enter into retirement revolve around healthcare, housing, and running out of money. Some quick kind of interesting stats. 64% of Americans will retire broke. I found that astounding, which means less than $10,000 is what they're retiring with. 46% of Americans say they'll not have enough money in their retirement, which again is to me a shocking revelation. So it's easy for people to get excited about retirement, but ultimately deciding to retire and when you do that, it's important to plan and evaluate your ability to do so. One of the main questions we get in terms of retirement, as we talk through these things with people, is how's my lifestyle going to change when I retire? And those are things that you truly want to leverage the knowledge of the professionals that you have in your life. There's going to be regular scares. The Social Security will dry up entirely or be drastically diminished. So those are some questions that we get all the time. Some other common questions revolve around legacy in terms of leaving money to children or to charity. And then also simply wondering how you're going to pay your bills. Where's the income going to come from? Some other questions, we get, and we touched on this just a little bit earlier, health insurance costs are an issue, especially prior to Medicare. However, you also need to keep in mind that when you get to Medicare, it generally is not going to completely cover healthcare expenses. So insurance supplements are an important part of that conversation as well. Many people don't think about taxes as much when you're contemplating retirement, but they're still a concern. Even when it comes to Social Security, that can be an impact. So balancing, the different investment vehicles becomes a hot topic, and where to draw the money, deciding whether to retire early or if you're going to retire before 59 and a half, where can you draw your retirement assets from and how. Finally, the dream scenarios that people throw out there is can I afford the second home on the beach? Can I travel the world? Things like that. We just want to know, can we do those things? So let's jump into some of those topics that you should consider as we're entering into those retirement years and considering whether that's something that we want to do and whether we can do it. Number one is we want to understand our income options. We need to know where the money that we're going to live on is coming from. So as we look at that, there's a number of different options, but structuring retirement income really can be complicated from the standpoint that there's potentially a lot of options. So how to maximize social security is one that a lot of people want to talk through and want to kind of figure out the whole balancing act of do I take it early? Do I wait longer and get an increased payment? Where's that break-even point? If you want more information and more in-depth information on Social Security, Kevin Engbers actually did our webinar series last month on Social Security. So again, you can go to our website and then under the Insights tab, you can find that Learning Center. You can actually go find Kevin's webinar on Social Security, and I'd encourage you, if that's something that you want to dive into more, to check out that webinar and then give us a call and we can talk through some of those things as well. But we also have to consider things like the timing of when we withdraw funds from retirement and also non-retirement accounts. So if you have an IRA and a Roth IRA and a taxable account, which do you draw from first? Is it a balance? How do you do that? Those are things to analyze for your particular situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal, but then too, looking at your pension payout options and then figuring out how to maximize annuity payments if you have those as well. So there's lots of different areas where income can flow, and figuring out the best system in which to use those sources is going to be a key to retirement longevity in terms of the financial aspect. So as we keep going on here, taxes, as we mentioned earlier, are going to be a major concern when it comes to withdrawing income for retirement. So understanding the tax structure around each type of account, balancing those withdrawals can really be key. So if you're retiring before age 59 and a half, and that's a consideration for you, there's probably some additional analysis that you want to be done as well. So there's going to be penalties for taking money out of certain retirement accounts like traditional IRAs prior to age 59 and a half. So that's maybe not going to be, an advisable solution, and you want to have some alternative plans in place in order to do that, maybe some alternative income sources if that's a goal of yours. There are some exemptions for the early withdrawal penalty. It's called a Section 72T withdrawal, but that involves substantially equal payments, different withdrawal schedules, and generally I would say is probably to be looked at as a last resort in terms of financial, in terms of income in retirement. Required minimum distributions become a part of life in retirement as well. So obviously the size of the account is going to determine kind of how much you have to take out. For some of you, that the required minimum distributions may be a small concern because you're going to withdraw more than what that would make you anyways, or just not something you're worried about. Others of you, that certainly could be something that you look at and just nags at you and isn't something that you really are too excited about and irritates you, for lack of a better term. So, but basically, this is the point where you're required to begin taking money from your accounts. The government's going to make you take that money and thus collect tax on that money as well. So, beneficiary distribution rules have changed as well. So there's a legacy aspect to your income pieces as well. The stretch IRA is now gone, and your beneficiaries have 10 years to get money out of those retirement accounts. So if you're passing along sizable amounts to your heirs that are going to be taxable to them, you're looking at causing them tax issues and potentially decreasing the amount that you're passing on because of the sizable nature of the tax that they're going to have to pay on those funds. So that's where you start to look at things and say, does it make sense to maybe take on some of that tax now, look at a Roth conversion or something like that, so that as you pass money on to your heirs, they're able to take those dollars tax-free instead of paying tax on all of that stuff. So with that, if you spent any time around us, we talk a lot about the power of the Roth IRA and the power of some of the benefits of the Roth IRA. So they can be used for a lot of different purposes, but one of those is to help ease the tax stress. Tax-free distributions for you in retirement, but also, tax-free distributions or tax-free beneficiary withdrawals as well, is something to plan around and consider and to contemplate. So we do harp on it a lot, but there are reasons that we do that, and certainly things that you guys want to consider, as you're looking through income sources for retirement. Again, it's a powerful vehicle and something to talk through. So Outside of income, obviously we have the income. We got to know where the money's coming from, but then we also have to consider how we're spending it, and what our expenses look like in retirement, because that's probably the next biggest piece is the control of our spending when it comes to retirement. So again, we've touched on this a couple times, but housing and healthcare, they continually come back up and are always going to be major concerns when it comes to retirement expenditures. So giving your life structure, really, when you look at it, when you don't have your daily work to go to, is a huge change. So it's really good to plan for it and to try to add some structure around your life. And really, ultimately, thinking about your future at this point in life involves planning a legacy. So taxes and legal red tape can be huge issues in planning if it's not done well. So these are things that you want to talk about early, that you want to plan for early. But again, when you're looking at those planned expenditures in retirement, these really are some of the big ones. It's living arrangements, ownership versus rental, the summer winter accommodations. Do we want to have a house up north for the summer and go down south for the winter? Are there ways that we can have a patio home and HOA and don't have to mow the lawn and clear the driveway, or ultimately will we end up in assisted living and nursing home, and can we travel, and again, what does legacy look like? So these are all planned expenditures that we can kind of talk through on what does retirement look like for you, what are your goals, create your best life, and how do we help you plan around that. Lifestyle can bring about spending changes. So, here are just a few to take note of, that if you're home all day, your utilities and entertainment costs are probably going to change. Your utilities are probably going to go up when you're around the house a little bit more often. Maybe you're paying for extra entertainment because you're available to do so. And potentially you're eating out more because you have the time and the freedom to do so. But there's also the opposite side of it, where maybe you're going to spend a little less on clothes because you don't have to have the nice work clothes or whatever that is, or gas if you were commuting to work. Maybe you're going to be driving around less. So there's some changes there. So it's important to talk about these seemingly small expenses. I know they seem minimal on the front end, but when you're talking about all these small expenses, they add up, and they really can make a huge difference in terms of retirement expense planning. So some interesting stats on spending in retirement. They really are all over the board. 38% of retirees decreased their spending, 35% increased, 22% didn't change, 7% were all over the board. Some months it's up, some months it's down. So really, to me, what that emphasizes is your personal need to dive into this for retirement, because everybody's situation is going to be different. So understanding, what did your expenses look like while you were working, and what do you expect those expenses to look like in retirement? Because that's, as we do retirement planning, a huge piece of the hey, I think it's time, the plan looks good, let's go ahead and make that change, is revolved around what you think those expenses are going to look like. So ultimately, it's best to start doing that now, because we don't really know what tomorrow's going to bring. And to be honest, in voluntary retirement, it's an extremely common reality, and we see it more and more. So having a plan in place can help you save stress and potentially a lot of money in the future, just by sitting down and making sure you do that planning. So there's the planned expenses, and then the other thing we have to be ready for in retirement is also the non-planned expenses. And none of us want to have negative non-planned events in our lives. We don't go into the day thinking, hey, I'm excited about that health event, but they happen. It's a reality of the world we live in. So it's good to pray for the best and plan for the worst is kind of what we say. But sorry about that. So healthcare's concerns for finance, obviously some of those are increased premiums, increased health needs, doctor visits, body part replacements. They say that you do that in retirement, but I'm 36 and I have a lot of working years left, and I've already got a metal shoulder, so that can hit you at any time. But the body part replacements, wheelchair and other adaptations needed, drug costs, Medicare supplements. So there's a lot of non-planned events that arise in retirement that we just have to be cognizant of and plan for. The loss or disability of a spouse is a big one. An early death. How can you financially withstand that. Those are all things that we don't plan for, or that we don't want to happen, but we can plan for in the event that they do come about. So some other things just to be ready for and be aware of. Durable power of attorney for healthcare is necessary to discuss. For end of life care, things like, do you want a do not resuscitate order? Do you want to be on life support for a limited period of time or indefinitely? You got to plan for those decisions that need to be made when you can no longer make them. And that ultimately is what needs to happen now. So when you've given specific instructions in these areas, truly what it does is it takes pressure off your loved ones that you have made responsible for some of those decisions when they arise. So the more you can do on the front end to make some of those decisions known to those that you've entrusted with your care and to make those decisions for you, you ease the burden on them. So some of the things to talk about are making sure that you ensure your doctor is well informed of your health and that you're comfortable with your medical professional. You want to make sure that you have good relationships there, just like you have in your finances. So establish who's going to handle all your finances if you're not able to do that. Like we talked about just a minute ago, defining the level of care and intervention if you have a serious illness. And then, some of these that we see that can drag on and cause hardship, the Alzheimer's, the dementia, talking about guardianship and durable power of attorney, who can carry on your affairs, in the event that you're not able to. And then, how does that impact long-term care qualification and items like that as well. So those are all important things to do, which actually leads us to our next section, which is making sure that we review, we update, and we formalize our estate plans. So these really are things that truly need to be updated regularly. I can't tell you how many times we have conversations with people that did their estate plan 25 years ago and life has changed 100 different times and they're still using the same estate plan. They need to be refreshed. They need to be updated regularly and reviewed. And those are things that we can kickstart with you and obviously help guide you in those capacities. We're not attorneys, but we can certainly help guide you in the right direction. Relationships change. So making sure that the people that you have named in your will and as your powers of attorney are still around to serve in those capacities and are willing to serve in those capacities and are still the same people that you would have serve in those capacities. Your estate can grow or shrink, and so there may be estate changes that need to happen. Maybe at one point in your life, one thing made sense, but life changed and maybe isn't necessarily something that you need anymore, or vice versa. So your advisor is a great place to start to have these conversations. Again, we're not attorneys, but we can certainly help guide you in this. But ultimately, the thing you need to remember is that these need to be reviewed and refreshed, and it's not necessarily a one-time set it and forget it, because like we all know, life is going to change. The other thing you need to do is review your insurance program. Again, we'll have people come in with all sorts of insurance policies that they've collected over the years or that they've been sold over the years, and some of them make sense and some of them don't. And so frequently reviewing that insurance program and making sure that you're covered for the things life's going to throw at you, but being overinsured isn't really a fun thing either. So ultimately, are you getting the most out of your insurance? Is a question that you want to ask. So when it comes to healthcare, analyzing the deductibles and the co-payments and the out-of-pocket maximums, are you getting the most out of those? And as your healthcare needs change, do you know which new specialties you need or which disciplines are in your network versus out of network? Just making sure that as life is potentially going to change and your healthcare needs are going to change, that your insurance is properly set up to accommodate those for you, and you're not going to have any drastic expenses that were unforeseen. So again, looking at who's insured, the elective procedures, anything that might arise, you just want to make sure you're covered for those. And then 2, long-term care. A lot of people, life insurance is always kind of the one you talk about as with your financial planner. But ultimately, a lot of people will hit a time in life, not everybody, everybody's situation's different, but there's times where maybe your life insurance need goes down and your long-term care insurance need really is going up. There's sort of a pivot in your life where an early death isn't going to rock you financially as much as maybe what one of you going into long-term care for an extended period of time is gonna do. So, analyzing the long-term care piece. So Medicare offers almost no coverage for long-term care, which, then is going to complicate and diminish your estate drastically. So just something you want to be aware of. So long-term care insurance can potentially pay off really well in the long run for both you and for your family, who'd have to support you otherwise if you didn't have it. But there are a ton of considerations in terms of the type of policy that you have and how that should look for your specific situation. So again, your advisor is a great place to start. They should be engaging you in these conversations if you're sliding into that phase of life where this needs to be something that you should talk about. And if they're not, I certainly would attempt to engage them in these conversations and start to dive through this when it comes to your situation, because there's a lot of different policies to talk through, and you just want to make sure that you're making the right decisions for you. Which leads us to our last point. It's always good to seek professional planning advice. Ultimately, planning is key, and like we talked about towards the beginning, you want to hope for the best, but you want to plan for the worst, and really you want to make sure that you have professionals who are helping you with that. So put your plan in writing. That's one of the biggest things, is that you want to have it down. You don't want to have it in your head because if something that happens to you, nobody can get that and nobody can access that. So you want to make sure your plan's in writing, and you want to make sure that you've communicated that with people that need to see it. So understanding the level of risk you want to take in your portfolio. We talk a lot around here about the difference between risk tolerance and risk capacity. You want to work with an advisor to see the difference. The tolerance is what you can stomach, and the capacity is what your portfolio can really take on. So understanding that in retirement, what are your buckets look like? Bucket one is your income that you need in the near term. Your bucket two is hey, that's 5 to 10 years off, and you've got a third bucket that, hey, I'm not going to touch that money for 15 years, so we can be a little more aggressive with it. But you want to talk through those things with your advisor. You want to discuss your plan with your intended beneficiaries. We see all the time too where kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews come in and they're completely surprised that they were left as the executor of an estate or had no idea that they were receiving this, that, or the other thing. And so you want to communicate those things. When something happens to you, there's enough going on emotionally that they're dealing with that you want to make sure that they're prepared and understand what you've entrusted them with when you're gone. So having those conversations, they're not easy conversations. So if you need help, we certainly are able to and willing to guide you in those and have some of those family meetings and guide some of those conversations. Acknowledge just straight up that your mental capacities diminish over time. You're not going to live forever, and you're not going to be mentally competent forever. So again, put the plan in writing when you have the decision-making capacity, and make sure to update those details regularly. So rely on a team of experienced professionals who kind of take the emotions out of the decision-making, who can look at things objectively and help you make those decisions. Receive a thorough review of your documents. We've talked about that, and then put it in place. Don't just talk about it, but actually put action to it. And that's where, having a trusted advisor with you can come along and try to help you in that regard. So a team of experienced professionals can help you kind of see the blind spots that you have and help make evidence-based decisions, I guess would be a good way to put it, about your future. Retirement finance and estate planning are complex fields, and it's not something to navigate casually. You want to make sure that you take it seriously and that you put it into place. So really, at the end of the day, they're bridges to be planned for and not crossed, when the need arises. So the big overarching theme is plan ahead of time and take care of what you need to take care of when you're able to take care of it. So those are some of the things that we talk through with our relationships a ton, questions that arise all the time. The 6 things really that as you're entering retirement, you should be thinking about. So if you have questions about those or want to talk through those more in depth or just say, hey, I just want a second set of eyes on my on my plan. I want to know, are we on the right track? Do we need to make some adjustments? We're always happy to have those conversations. We absolutely love them. We love sitting down, getting to know you, talking through your plans and seeing how we can come alongside and help. Ultimately, that's what we're here for, is to help you identify what your true wealth is, and then help you plan and prepare for everything along the way. So again, pleasure being with you guys here today. Thanks so much for attending the webinar. Keep an eye out for all the webinars to come. We'll keep you guys posted via email. We'll try to post them on social media, but then ultimately, obviously on the website, everything's going to be listed there as well. So again, I'm Nik Aamlid. Thanks for joining me here today for the retirement planning, 6 things to consider in retirement planning, questions to ask, and we'll look forward to connecting with you guys soon. All right, take care and have a great day.